Welcome to the Real Lost Boss podcast.
Hello, welcome to episode 38 of the Real Lost Boss podcast. And in this episode, we are continuing our little mini-series looking at various weight loss methods, stroke diets that we started with episode 35. And in this episode, we're going to go for, is it really worth your time intermittent fasting? Because that is what intermittent fasting is. It is a time-bound weight loss method, and it is only one of a very small few weight loss methods where it doesn't actually look at what you eat. It simply restricts when you can eat. Now, fasting has been around for probably since time began. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people push it, because a lot of people make this correlation that years and years and years ago, weight wasn't an issue in society. Therefore, we should revert back to old practices so weight won't become an issue again. And it just doesn't really work like that. Yes, hundreds, thousands of years ago, people used to fast, but it wasn't through choice. It was down to the fact that food was not readily available. Early man might have gone days, weeks without eating. It's not because they wanted to go days and weeks without eating. It's because they were hunter-gatherers and they couldn't go to Tesco 24/7, Tesco Express or, their local off license that's open till midnight to get food. They had to go out and find their food, and sometimes, certainly if it was winter, food was not readily available. So they had no option but to go long periods without eating. Fasting in terms of a weight loss stroke diet method in modern day times is actually fairly new. It has been researched from, early 20th century, early 19th century. 20th century is like 1900s onwards, isn't it? So like early 20th century. But it didn't really become popular until probably about 10, 15 years ago, something like that. It became very popular in the UK through Michael Mosley, who promoted the 5-2 diet. I'll talk about that a little bit more shortly. And in America, it became very, very popular throughout the tech industry, like Silicon Valley, California, and was the most popular weight loss method in 2018. That has since been taken over by the ketogenic diet, which I've not done yet. I might do that in a future podcast. I have done the carnivore diet, which is an extreme version of keto, but I've not actually looked at keto. So in terms of weight loss methods, stroke fad diets, it is a fairly new-ish concept, but from it sort of springing up, it has become very, very popular and doesn't show any signs of disappearing. So what is intermittent fasting? So intermittent fasting is basically creating eating windows of when we should consume calories. And there's lots of different ways to do that. OMAD. So OMAD stands for 1 meal a day. And basically, it is an eating window normally of 1 hour. Sometimes it's 2, but normally it's 1 hour. So basically, you might only be allowed to eat between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then from 6 p.m. until 5 p.m. the next day, you fast. You don't consume anything. And there's lots of different eating windows around that. So OMAD's probably on a day-to-day basis the most extreme one. But some people choose a 24, which is a 20-hour fast with a 4-hour eating window. Some people choose a 18-6, 18-hour fast, 6-hour eating window. The most popular on a day-to-day basis is the 16-8 intermittent fasting diet, which is basically 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating, and normally people eat between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. in the evening. More extreme levels of fasting can be alternate day fasting, so people eat on a day-to-day basis. Eat one day, have one day off, so they might eat Monday, fast Tuesday, eat Wednesday, fast Thursday, and so on and so forth. I mentioned there about Michael Mosley, who made intermittent fasting popular in 2012 in the UK and in Australia. His method that he promoted was the 5-2 diet. And it's the only intermittent fasting plan where you do actually consume food every single day. But basically, with the 5-2, you ate a certain amount of calories, a higher amount of calories Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or for 5 days of the week. You could choose whichever. It didn't need to be Monday to Friday. And then 2 days of the week, you just ate 500 to 600 calories a day. So five kind of normal days of eating, and then 2 very low days of eating. People do push fasting, and they do go for longer periods of time, from 72 hours. I have seen some people do 10-day fasts on social media. Whether they are actually doing a 10-day fast, likewise, no one can prove anything unless you stood next to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I do believe that a lot of people that promote fasting don't adhere to what they are preaching. So what can you eat or drink when you are fasting? Well, you can't eat anything. It's basically virtually calorie free. And depending who's promoting fasting, like a lot of fad diets, depends on what people feel is acceptable. A very common one is just water and black coffee. So you can have water and black coffee when you are on your fast. And then when you eat, there's no real principles around what you should eat. You can basically eat what you want within that eating window. I have seen other people in their fasting period. So like I say, if you're doing the 16-8, your 16 hours of not consuming food. I have seen people sort of do, sugar-free cordials, sugar-free pop, which is virtually 0 calorie, alongside like black coffee and water. Other people might have things like electrolytes. I have seen people have things like fiber supplements and stuff like that. But really, it should just be water. It should just be water. And then, like I say, when you've got your eating window, you can, kind of eat whatever you want. Again, that is promoted differently by different people promoting intermittent fasting. So, like any fad diet, is there a magic to it? No. And this is one of the big issues with intermittent fasting. A lot of people claim it does something amazing when it comes to fat loss. Very similar, again, to the ketogenic diet. And one of the big claims around intermittent fasting is, and the way people sell it, they do sell it in a way that is very convincing. And it kind of makes sense, unless you understand the theories of thermodynamics, and then it's just absolute nonsense. But basically, again, with the 16-8 fast, this is, a big promotion of it, is they go through different windows of what happens to your body while you are fasting. And they basically sort of claim, the first 4 hours, your blood sugars normalize and your insulin levels normalize. Your next 4 hours, something else kicks off in the body. And basically what it does is it kind of scales up to this point where the 4 hours before you eat anything, your body is just chewing away at your body fat, and your fat levels are just raised through the roof, and you burn stupid amounts of fat. And people buy into it. And like I say, it kind of makes sense in a way, because people just think food makes me fat. So if I'm not eating food, and I'm certainly spending a long time not eating food, then my body's got to tap into my fat stores, and it will tap into them more than ever if all this magic is going on in the body. And it is just an absolute load of nonsense. Yeah, how do you lose fat? Intermittent fasting. The same way we lose fat on any weight loss method, and that is you go into a calorie deficit. There is a massive difference between fat burning and fat loss. Now, the fact of fasting for 16 hours, 20 hours, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, you're just in a calorie deficit. It doesn't increase fat burning in any way. And if it did increase fat burning in any way, yeah, there is a difference between fat burning and fat loss. We burn fat as fuel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's nothing special about that. We have two fuel sources in the body. One is carbohydrates and one is body fat. And yeah, we tap into our body fat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do burn fat in the presence of carbohydrates, and carbohydrates kind of come in and out as energy as and when we need them. But this idea of the reason you lose so much weight intermittent fasting is because, like I say, it creates this magic super fat burning thing within the body. Yeah, it's just a load of nonsense. You go into a calorie deficit like everybody else, and depending on what your fasting is, can depend on how severe that calorie deficit is. The first method I mentioned was OMAD, 1 meal a day, OMAD. And yeah, you get given a 1 hour eating window, and you might be sat there going, well, I can eat tons of calories in an hour. Technically you can, but when we go on to any weight loss method, any diet, there is something in the back of our mind that does make us eat less, or it does make us eat healthier, which tends to lead to a reduction in calorie intake. It's very rare, and I'm not saying this doesn't happen, because it will happen, because a lot of people will go, I did intermittent fast, I didn't lose anything. But it's very rare someone that does OMAD and they can only eat 1 meal a day. The 1 meal a day that they're going to eat will be a 4,000 calorie, double XL pepperoni Papa John's pizza. Like I say, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it is quite rare. People that do it tend to eat reasonably healthy. And if you're eating reasonably healthy and not eating for 23 hours, there's only so many calories you are going to be able to take in that 1 hour eating window. So if you do OMAD, you're going to be in quite a big calorie deficit. That in turn, it's going to cause some fat loss. Of course it is, because that's all fat loss is determined by. We also need to take into account that going on to quite extreme weight loss methods, and that would be OMAD or doing like alternate day fasting and stuff like that, you're going to clear a lot of stuff out of your system because you're not putting a lot of stuff into your system as well, and that will all show on the scales. The most popular weight loss method for intermittent fasting is the 16-8. Very, very popular. And the main reason why it's popular is that it's probably the most sustainable out of all fasting methods. Eating once a day is flipping hard, right? Eating every other day, yeah, the day you're eating, you might allow yourself to eat whatever you want. But even if you ate every other day, again, and you ate whatever you want, on the day you're eating, you might consume 5,000 calories. But if you divide that by 2, that's 2,500 calories a day. And if you're if you have a weight issue, there's a very good chance you're still going to be in a calorie deficit. But again, anyone that does any weight loss method, they will always try. I'm not saying they will succeed, but they will always try to eat a bit healthier, to consume a bit less food. So like I say, that will always contribute as well towards the calorie deficit. Now, I'm going to go into some pros and cons of intermittent fasting, but before I do, I want to debunk some other things that people promote as benefits to intermittent fasting. So obviously the number one selling point or the number one promotional tool for doing an intermittent fast is the fact that it ramps up this fat burning in the body and causes you to lose ridiculous amounts of weight in a short period of time. No, it just puts you into a calorie deficit like any other weight loss method, and depending on what sort of fast you are choosing to take part in will depend on how big that calorie deficit is. If you do something like a 3-day 72-hour water fast, you're going to lose a lot of food weight out of the body because you're still going to be going to the toilet, but you're not going to be replacing what's coming out. And yeah, if you burn 3,500 calories in a day and you don't eat anything for 3 days, you're probably going to see a 10-pound loss, combination of some body fat and a combination of a massive reduction in like food and water weight that's in the body. But other things that are promoted as a massive benefit to intermittent fasting is the regulation of blood sugars. So it can help to regulate your blood sugars, help to regulate the amount of insulin that's released by your body. And this is promoted to people that have any type of insulin resistance. So you might be pre-diabetic, you might be type 2 diabetic, you might have something like polycystic ovaries. The honest truth is, blood sugar normalization or regulation happens in between any period of not eating. And there's absolutely or very limited science to suggest that going prolonged periods of not eating has any benefit to helping your blood sugars regulate. So basically what I mean by that is, if I ate something at 12 p.m, whatever I eat, obviously the more carbs that's in what I eat, the more my blood sugars are going to raise. But even if I just ate protein and fat, my blood sugars are going to go up a little bit. But whatever we eat, our blood sugars raise. If it includes carbs, yes, they're going to raise quite a bit. Through digestion, as that food digests and goes through my system, my blood sugars will regulate and go back to normal. And you do not need to not eat for hours and hours and hours on end for that to happen. Blood sugars for most people will regulate and normalize after 3 to 4 hours. Again, that all depends on what you eat. Now, obviously, if you do have any type of insulin resistance and your insulin receptors aren't quite working as they should be, that might take longer or slightly longer for your blood sugars to normalize. And depending on how severe your insulin resistance is, so if you are type 2 diabetic, your blood sugars might stay constantly elevated than what they should be. But you are only ever going to balance and normalize those with a period, a sustainable period of eating healthier, moving more, and hopefully some weight loss. And it doesn't matter what weight loss method you take part in to do that, whether it's just calorie counting, whether it's doing Slimming World, whether it's doing intermittent fasting, the ketogenic diet, there's a very good chance if you stick to any of those methods for a prolonged period of time, eat healthier, move more on a day-to-day basis, reduce your levels of visceral fat in your body, you're going to help to normalize your blood sugars anyway by, helping out your insulin resistance. So, going 10, 12, 14 hours, there's no major benefit to leveling out your blood sugars, as it were, than just having normal eating times between meals. You might have breakfast at 8 a.m, lunch at 12 p.m, tea at 5 p.m. So another thing that people promote around intermittent fasting is cell autophagy. Basically, the building of new cells in the body. So our cells have a shelf life. They live for so long, they die, and then the body rebuilds new cells to replace the old cells, as it were. And a lot of people claim when we are fasting and the longer periods we go from fasting, the better the body heals itself, and it will regenerate even things that might be long-term damage to the body, things like arthritis and stuff like that. The honest truth is that's just not the case. Why people have come up with this assumption is our body repairs itself the most while we are asleep, right? And while we are asleep, we are not eating food. You still have food in your system, but you're not eating food. So people are like, right, if my body regenerates itself the best while we are asleep, then surely if I'm awake and I'm not eating, it'll do the same thing. And that's just not the case. Basically, why does the body repair itself the most while we are asleep? How many of you guys have gone to sleep at night time and you've felt a bit rubbish, you've had a bit of a cold, or you've tweaked your back or twisted your ankle, and you wake up the next day, but how are you feeling today? I'm feeling miles better today. Why? because the body, while you are asleep, you're kind of in like a mini state of hibernation. Therefore, the body can dedicate a lot more energy to repairing itself. Well, I'm sitting now recording this podcast, my body's giving energy to be talking. My body's giving energy to me moving my hands about, me thinking. Now, obviously, it gives energy while I'm asleep to brain function. Otherwise, I'd be dead. But it doesn't have to dedicate a lot of energy to different things. It can dedicate more time and energy to sorting out bits and pieces that's going on in the body. Don't get me wrong, there are some studies that do claim that cell autophagy, the rebuilding of the body, can be enhanced by fasting, but there's no concrete evidence to say that it is a major benefit. And there is some concrete evidence to show that cell autophagy, the body repairing itself, is normally peak optimal when it has food in its system. Why? Because that is where we get a lot of things from to repair ourselves. You know, to repair muscles, protein from food. Yeah, to repair lots of different, you know, cells. You need vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and you get that from what you eat. Yes, if you are fasting, there's no food in your system, your body will be tapping into body fat purely for energy to keep functioning. One thing body fat does not have, it does not have much nutrition in it. It has energy, calories, yes, but it does not have much nutrition in it. So the evidence is very sketchy that cell autophagy, the body repairing itself, is better fasted than when we have food in our system. But like I say, there is studies, concrete studies, that show we repair ourselves very well while we are eating food. It's all good. Okay, last but by no means least, this is why quite a few not bodybuilders, but people into fitness sort of, and this kind of does relate to point 2 actually about repairing the body, but when we are fasted, the body does release more HGH, human growth hormone, and this can help repair muscle, build muscle, preserve muscle. Of course it can. But again, there's no concrete evidence that that's any better than when we are eating. Because one thing we do need to understand about fasting is pretty much everyone fasts every day. Okay? We have a meal in the morning. The first main meal we eat in the morning is called break fast, because it's the first thing you eat after a prolonged period of not eating. Now, that prolonged period of not eating might just be while you are asleep, but it is still probably the longest time you are ever going to go within 24 hours where you are not consuming food for most people. So, you know, if you go to sleep at 11 p.m. at night time and your alarm goes off at 7 a.m., you have gone 8 hours without eating. If you then look at the time you spent, even if you've had a bit of a heavy eating session on the sofa before going to sleep, you look at the time, you know, the last thing you ate might be 9:30, 10 o'clock at night time. So there's another hour there, and then your alarm might go off at 7, but by the time you've sort of woken up and had a stretch and maybe woke the kids up, gone and had a shower, got dressed, gone into the kitchen for breakfast, it might be 8 a.m. So your fasting window could be 10 hours. And that whole process of human growth hormone being released, helping repair cells, helping the body recover from any injury. If you go to the gym, lift weights, it's when your body will build more muscle. There's no sort of time frame. It is basically, there doesn't seem to be any evidence to show there's any difference to the amount of HGH that's released if you fast for 10 hours than if you fast for 16 hours. Okay, so yes, that is a benefit of fasting, but it doesn't mean you need to do intermittent fasting. You need to stick to these specific time windows to get the benefit, if that makes sense. Okay, so those little bits and pieces I've just talked about there probably aren't the most common reasons. You will hear them crop up. They're kind of like the icing on the cake that people use to promote intermittent fasting. Why do people promote intermittent fasting? If it generally has no major benefits to any other weight loss method, because studies show, look, fat loss is from going into a calorie deficit, consuming less calories than you burn. And all these weight loss methods that I've talked about in this little mini series I've done from episode 35 of the podcast, and I will have said this before, they all have one thing in common. They all are designed to put you into a calorie deficit for you to consume less calories than you burn, whether it's taking a weight loss injection that helps control your appetite, whether it's doing the carnivore diet where you basically only eat meat and eggs, so you're eating, or what you can eat is very restricted, whether it's doing something like Slimming World where calorie dense foods are sin, so you don't overconsume them. You know, they all put you into a calorie deficit. That is one, common trend. And studies show when calories are matched, fat loss is exactly the same. Why? Thermodynamics. Fat loss is dictated by calories in versus calories out. It really is that simple. And yeah, lots of studies out there, proper studies, not biased studies, not just some random guy in a university going, well, I've looked at this for 2 months. No, this is proper controlled studies done on humans, right? Where people have been given certain amounts of calories, told to eat at this time, told to eat whenever they want to, whenever it suits them. And when calories are matched, fat loss is virtually the same. So if someone ate 2,000 calories a day between 8 a.m. in the morning and 10 p.m. at night time, and someone ate 2,000 calories a day in an eating window, whether that's OMAD, they just do it in an hour, 1 meal a day, or they do it between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m., the fat loss will be exactly the same. Okay. Let's talk about pros and cons. I do like to always look at some positives. And I've already said this in this podcast. Intermittent fasting, the 16-8 method that is the most popular, out of all weight loss methods, is actually one of the most sustainable out there. I'm not saying it is sustainable long term, but out of all, fad diets that's out there, it is one of the most sustainable. Why? Well, we always look at the sustainability of a weight loss method. We look at restriction. That's the main sort of factor that can make a weight loss method unsustainable, is how restrictive it is. And in all honesty, a 12-8 intermittent fast isn't really that restrictive on a day-to-day basis. Loads of people miss breakfast anyway, and that's what a 16-8 does. Right? If you're only eating between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m, it basically means you're not eating breakfast. Yeah, so that's going to save you some calories. And a lot of people do overeat at night time. Loads of different reasons for that. But a lot of people do overeat at night time when they've got everything settled for the day. They get on the couch, they put the telly on. Next thing, the chocolate comes out, and you might eat 1,000 calories all day. That's probably why you're overeating at night time. But anyway, that's for a different topic. And next thing, you've done 1,500 calories in of crisps and chocolate within 10 minutes. And yeah, if you are intermittent fasting, doing that 12-8, you ain't doing that. And that is going to give you a massive reduction in calories and probably put you into a calorie deficit. And really, missing breakfast and not eating after 8 p.m. at night, it's not the biggest chore in the world. Might be a bit tricky the odd morning if you wake up hungry. But this is also a con of the intermittent fasting diet. But, it's not really that much of a chore. It also fairly fits into everyday life. Most people, in all honesty, don't need to eat out of those windows anyway. So what I mean by that is most people have the tea at 6 p.m. at night time. Most people have the lunch 12, half 12. So yeah, really, you're only missing one main meal, which is your breakfast. Why else is it quite sustainable? Well, it doesn't tell you what you can and can't eat. A lot of people do struggle with that. Now, a lot of people have an unhealthy relationship with food. So even when they go on a diet, they will stop eating chocolate and crisps and McDonald's and stuff like that. But that's not part of the intermittent fasting diet. The plan is we're going to give you an eating window. You can actually eat whatever you want within that eating window. I'm not saying you should, and I'm not saying that people that promote intermittent fasting say you should do that, but that is what intermittent fasting is. I had someone the other day comment on one of my posts saying, I'm really struggling to get all my calories in while intermittent fasting. I'm like, well, stop doing two weight loss methods at once. Either track your calories or intermittent fast. There's no need to start merging weight loss methods together. Most people struggle to stick to one weight loss method. So if you're, I'm intermittent fasting, but I'm also not eating carbs. So you're trying to do an intermittent fasting keto diet? Really? How long are you going to stick to that for? Let's have a bit of a reality check here. But yeah, it doesn't really restrict what you can eat. So yes, most of the time you should be eating, and hopefully you will be eating healthier. But if on a weekend between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. you want to go and have a McDonald's, you can go and have a McDonald's. If you want to go and have a couple of beers in the afternoon, you can do. So yeah, it's not the most overly restrictive of weight loss methods, which is why I think a lot of people can sustain it for a fairly decent period of time. But there lies the cons of the intermittent fast. It is going to affect your life at some point. So it's not very social. Now, someone said this the other week and I thought about it and I was like, do you know what? That does kind of make sense. Now, I'm not saying you should determine what weight loss method you're going to do on how sociable it is, but the honest truth is, it is something we do need to think about because, let's say you are doing that 12-8 intermittent fasting and your mum rings up. Hiya, it's your mum and dad's. No, it's your mum and dad's. Hiya, it's mine and your dad's wedding anniversary on Thursday night. We're going to Mimo's. We've booked a table 8 p.m. I can't come. Why? I'm intermittent fasting. It's our 40th wedding anniversary. You're coming? Well, I'll come, but I'm just going to sit there drinking water. Can you not do it at 6 p.m? No, people have got work. They don't finish work till like half 5. It's 8 p.m. Little things like that. Now, again, I'm not saying you should determine your weight loss method on the fact that it's your mum and dad's 40th wedding anniversary, but every now and then, there's going to be periods that crop up where you need to eat 8 p.m. onwards. Every now and then, there's going to be periods where you want to. And there shouldn't be that restriction, right? There shouldn't. Likewise with breakfast, you might be like, I'm happy missing breakfast. But the odd morning you might wake up. I don't eat breakfast every day. I genuinely don't. I probably miss it once, maybe twice a week. Very, very common on a Monday morning that I don't eat breakfast. But I'm not doing it on purpose, right? I don't eat breakfast on a Monday because generally I have quite a high calorie day Sunday and I'm not that hungry. But if I woke up hungry on a Monday morning, I would eat breakfast. Sometimes we do need that choice. Now, some people might be like, no, I need that boundary to stop. But at the end of the day, a weight loss method needs to not only stick with you long enough to hit your goal, it also needs to change overall habits in your body or permanent habits in your body or in your lifestyle so you maintain your losses after you hit your goal. And the honest truth is, to never eat again from 8 p.m. at night to 12 p.m. the next day just isn't the reality for most people. Other issues with intermittent fasting, it can be quite dangerous for certain people. It really, really can. So I've already talked about people promoting the benefits, whether it's true or not, of it helping to regulate blood sugars. Intermittent fasting is really dangerous for diabetics. Food, yes, can raise blood sugars. Food can also help to regulate blood sugars. Now, certainly if you're type 1 diabetic, you can't intermittent fast. You have a hypo at 9 in the morning, you need sugar to raise your blood sugars up. Otherwise, there's a chance you're going to end up in with some serious health issues. But likewise, anyone that has insulin resistance does need to eat food sometimes to help regulate their blood sugars. So it actually isn't suitable for anyone that is diabetic, but people won't tell you that. Likewise, it's not suitable for people with high blood pressure either. Again, there is some evidence to show that doing an intermittent fast does help lower blood pressure. when people lose weight. But that's the same with any weight loss method. It's not the intermittent fasting, it's the weight loss. So let's lose weight in a healthy, sustainable fashion. It'll help with your blood pressure. Also, issues with intermittent fasting or with intermittent fasting is if you're on medication that needs to be taken with food, it simply isn't suitable. If you wake up in the morning and you need to take some sort of medication, it could be statins, it could be certain blood pressure meds, certain antibiotics that have to be consumed with food, then intermittent fasting isn't going to work for you because you do not want to take those medications on an empty stomach. Likewise, you do not want to delay taking those medications till at some point during the day when you're allowed to eat. So yeah, there's a few issues. I did talk about this in the last podcast with Slimming World. Could we make intermittent fasting into a more sustainable? Yeah, you could. Absolutely could. You could do flexible intermittent fasting, and I'm sure some people do that. So what I mean by that is literally 95% of the time, I'm going to stick to this eating window, 12 p.m. till 8 p.m. with, the flexibility that if I do wake up one morning Hank Marvin, I can have some breakfast. Likewise, if it is a special occasion, a friend's birthday, mum and dad's anniversary, I can go out for the odd meal and actually eat after 8 p.m. The only issue with having flexible intermittent fasting is you're not intermittent fasting. You're probably just doing a regular normal diet. Most people, if I look at my own diet, I don't have any restriction on when I can eat food, but I fast for probably at least 12 hours a day. I'm not doing it on purpose. And like I say, other things before, if there were benefits to, increasing HGH in the body, regulating blood sugars, cell production in the body, or cell regrowth, or cell autophagy, whatever you want to call it, right? I will get all those benefits if they were increased benefits from not eating. I fast 12 hours a day most days. I love having an evening snack, but I tend to have my last calorie, as it were, about 9:30 at night time. Very, very rare I eat breakfast before 9:30 in the morning. Very, very rare. So I tend to go most days where I don't eat for 12 hours. Now that is reduced every now and then. Sometimes I'll go out to the pub at night time. Sometimes I'll go out for a later meal. Likewise, there might be times in the morning where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I need to eat this morning, and I'll eat. But most of the time, I fast 12 hours a day. It's not intermittent fasting. I'm not doing anything specific. I'm not doing it on purpose. It's just my normal eating pattern. And I'll be totally honest with you, that's probably the normal eating pattern for most people, or for a lot of people. We'll have at least, we've already talked about this, while you're asleep, just before going to bed, waking up in the morning. Most people will have this quite prolonged period of time every single day where you do fast, but you're not doing it on purpose. There we go. That's my thoughts on intermittent fasting. Whether you agree or not, I don't know. It's just my own personal opinion, but there is nothing special about it. Please do not think it increases fat burning in the body. It is just a time restrictive way of eating. And if you stick to it correctly, there's a very good chance you're going to go into a calorie deficit. And if you're in a calorie deficit, guess what? You are going to lose some body fat. There we go. That's it for another podcast. If you've liked it, tell your friends. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the bits you can for me. That would be absolutely amazing. And as always, till next time, boss your weight loss.